Today on City Beat, we're shifting into overdrive with a look at how police train behind the wheel. Plus, we'll ride along with an officer on patrol. And finally, we'll make you think twice before drinking and driving. Next on City Beat. When it comes to driving, these officers are the best, but even one drink would keep them off the road. Welcome to City Beat. I'm Joe Oliver. Coming up, the tragic account of a mother whose daughter's life was taken by a drunk driver. In the agony, regret, and disability of a driver whose own drinking nearly cost him his life. But first, most of us remember when we turned 16 and took the driver's test. For most of us, that's the last time we were tested. That's not the case for the Sacramento Police Department. Every cadet at the police academy goes through a rigorous driver's training class, and then every 2 years after that, officers get behind the wheel for a refresher course. This intense training helps them steer clear of auto accidents and is a driving force within the police department. Amidst the chaos of an automobile accident, police officers rush to be first on the scene. But on rare occasions, they may be the cause of the accident. The Sacramento Police Department learned this painful lesson all too well during a series of squad car crashes.
In the late 1990s, our department experienced a lot of tragic events regarding pursuits and high-speed driving. We had citizens who were injured and died as a result of some of those accidents. Citizens were charged to protect. Officer Morgan Rock died in an accident during that period of time. All of these incidences also affected public confidence in our abilities to do our job.
In order to turn things around, the department took drastic action and revamped its policy on high-speed pursuits and the overall Emergency Vehicle Operations Course, or EVOC as it's better known. The revamp included addressing 4 key areas: policy, training, supervision, and equipment.
If you look at various departments across the United States, some will talk about not doing pursuits. Well, that's unrealistic. If we're behind somebody who just killed several people, or just walked into a liquor store and shot the owner, do you really want us not to chase them? Do you really want us to let them get away?
Along with the need to chase certain bad guys, there can also be a morale issue involved.
If you're not going to chase the bad guys, you lose morale because that's their job. Every one of these cops are out there in the street for one reason: get the bad guys, put them away so our citizens are safe. And now all of a sudden you're saying, well, let them go. You just can't do that.
But what law enforcement can do is determine when a high-speed pursuit is the prudent and appropriate course of action. That's exactly what the Sacramento Police Department has done.
When I monitor a pursuit, we're looking for basically 2 things: the public safety and also our officers' safety. We're looking at the total picture when we're looking at pursuits. You know, we're looking at the weather conditions, the time of day, the speeds, what the want is for the pursuit. You know, is it a traffic violation? Is it a homicide suspect? Is it an armed suspect? You know, we look at all those things.
If any of those factors contribute to endangering the public, the pursuit can be halted.
And there's going to be times when you have to chase. But there's times when you can, we don't need this. We can get this guy later. He looks at the situation and says, hey, there's too much traffic out here. It's becoming too dangerous. Suspect is too erratic. We're going to get out of this.
Learning how to make this determination is a key factor in the EVOC training. Sacramento Police Department recruits go through a rigorous 40-hour vehicle training course, and all sworn personnel go through a refresher course every 2 years. California law enforcement standards only require a 4-hour refresher block, but Sergeant Smith and the department mandate 20 hours.
His program has been tremendously successful for us. The accident rates have dropped considerably. The injury rates have dropped. Damage to patrol cars have dropped, all because of his training program.
a training program that includes a number of innovations, including practice driving both squad cars and unmarked vehicles, daytime and nighttime training, and the use of interference automobiles to simulate actual traffic situations.
Your officers, by the nature of the job, are going to be required to drive at high speeds in different traffic conditions.
We have two interference vehicles out there when these guys are running. That's pretty innovative.
The Sacramento Police Department also trains their officers in the use of PIT, or Pursuit Intervention Technique, a maneuver that turns or spins a vehicle to end a pursuit.
We make contact with the suspect vehicle with our car, and we spin the vehicle around. Most of the time the car will stall, and we'll be able to take the subject into custody.
Detective Terry Chu, who recently completed his 2-year EVOC refresher class, has used PIT in multiple life-threatening situations.
One of which was a woman who's trying to kill herself, and that actually prevented her from getting into any of the accidents and hitting any innocent motorists.
In addition to behind-the-wheel training, the Sacramento Police Department uses driving simulators.
We want them to get a feel for actual emergency driving without the risk. It's not intended to replace hands-on driving.
The hands-on handling of high-speed chases is not just left up to the officer. The Sacramento Police Department also prides itself on having direct supervision over all pursuits.
We focus in on supervision. We have patrol sergeants out there that we train to control those pursuits.
That extra control can provide perspective to an officer who's caught up in a high-speed pursuit.
Do we have helicopter and canine available? When you get in a pursuit or a Code 3 driving situation, you tend to get a little tunnel vision. First you get an adrenaline charge, plus you take it a little personal.
If that personal factor starts to interfere with public safety, or if the road or traffic conditions don't warrant continuing, the patrol sergeant will cancel the pursuit.
375 Code 4 that pursuit. If I'm Code 4 in a pursuit or stopping a pursuit, I want to explain to the officer why I stopped it and maybe explain to them what they should have been looking for to stop it themselves.
Along with supervision from patrol sergeants, the Sacramento Police Department can also employ their helicopter to monitor pursuits.
The helicopter is tremendous for us in a pursuit. Once the helicopter gets over a pursuit, they can control it. They can see ahead of time what the traffic looks like, if there's any hazards. The units can slow down and back off, and the helicopter can follow the suspect.
But if the emergency is such that the officer can't slow down and back off, the Sacramento Police Department has taken great strides to improve the safety of their squad cars.
Our safety officer came up with some innovative ideas, I think, for making their cars more identifiable. They put the black tape on the side, which illuminates at night. They've got the strobe lights on all four corners of the vehicle.
Each vehicle also contains special equipment known as stop sticks, demonstrated here in this instructional video, that can be used to puncture and slowly deflate the tire, ending a vehicle chase.
We're constantly reevaluating new technology and looking at ways to shut down pursuits. And we shut down more pursuits than we allow to continue.
These attempts to revamp EVOC and shut down pursuits have really paid off. And that's largely thanks to the driving ambition of Sergeant Smith.
The Sacramento Police Department is very proud of Sergeant Mike Smith and what he's done at that EVOC course.
In fact, he's been steering the course for EVOC for almost 30 years and loves his job so much he's put off retirement.
Seeing this thing advance a long way from when we started in 1976. It feels good the other agencies want to know what we're doing, because there's no doubt we kind of set the pace for EVOC training.
In 1997, the Sacramento Police Department was involved in auto accidents that resulted in 5 fatalities. That difficult driving period led to a number of lawsuits against the city and approximately $5 million paid out in settlements. But in the 6 years since that troublesome time, the revamped EVOC process has reduced the number of moving vehicle accidents per 1 million miles driven and has saved the city millions of dollars in automobile liability. Sacramento police officers practice a lot on this driving simulator, but they also spend a lot of time behind the wheel of a squad car. Not only is there danger in the car, but in every facet of patrol. We spent some time out on the street with officers on patrol to see what emergencies they encounter.
I'm the boss around here.
Whether it's responding to a domestic violence call,
yeah, the right to remain silent,
or reading a criminal their rights, the life of a police officer on patrol can be unpredictable and dangerous.
We all expect danger within our shift because we deal with it every day. But in the back of our mind, we always know that at a moment's notice, we have to suddenly gear up and be prepared for that moment.
Being a patrol officer is one of the most dangerous jobs in this police department. I was involved in an incident on the street where I was actually stabbed by an individual. So I can testify that personally, yes, it is a dangerous job.
And with that danger can come an element of fear.
There is an element of fear that I have, that I experience each day. It's one of those things that all law enforcement officers experience when they go through situations like this.
And the Sacramento Police Department is helping them deal with it through the use of technology. Patrol cars are now equipped with not only radios, but also mobile data computers, or MDCs. The MDC operates on a closed network system that allows the officer to communicate with dispatch and other police personnel. It also gives them access to police records.
The technology today enables our officers to gain information about potential suspects at calls for service. So now the officer can call in additional help to handle the call more efficiently.
Efficiency is also enhanced through a new computer-aided dispatch system that just became operational.
Some of the enhancements that our new computer-aided dispatch will bring to the police department is our ability to use GPS, or global positioning system. And this will allow us to enhance the ability to do proximity dispatching. In other words, if a squad car is available close to a call, dispatch will be able to dispatch that car quicker than a car all the way across town.
Another improvement that adds to community safety is the in-car camera, standard in every patrol car.
We realized that there was a benefit to the community for an independent video verification that our officers are doing their job and doing it well.
These technological improvements have come a long way since many officers started on the force.
I know when I started my career, we had none of that. And so the officer has a lot of information at his fingertips.
If you've ever been in one of our squad cars before, I mean, it's like sitting in the pilot seat of an F-16. We're really lucky here at the Sacramento Police Department because we have this great technology push.
Along with increased information, today's patrol officer also has a lot of training. When they complete the police academy, all new officers must spend at least 2 years on patrol. At the start, they're accompanied by a field training officer.
A field training officer is responsible for overseeing the new officers that come out in the field, making sure that they are following department guidelines and procedures. We ride with them.
During that field training period, new officers can work through some common mistakes.
The most common mistake I see as an FTO is new training officers assuming that vehicles are going to be pulling over for them when they are responding code 3 and when they're running pursuits. They generally have an idea that once they get into a black and white squad car and they have their overhead siren or their overhead lights on and their siren running, that people are going to merge and get out of their way. That's not the case. People are listening to their stereos, they're talking on their cell phones, they're not paying attention to what they're doing on the road.
To help remind citizens of their responsibility to make way for police cars, the city of Sacramento participated in the Please Abide, Move Aside campaign.
If you're driving down the road as a citizen and you see an officer lights and siren behind you, you need to pull over to the right as soon as possible.
The patrol officers stress safety while driving code 3 as well.
Code 3 driving and pursuit driving is probably the safest driving that we do as officers.
It doesn't mean that we drive fast. It just means that we're turning on our emergency lights, our siren, activating all the emergency equipment to help clear the roadway more.
And that call could be a variety of situations the patrol officer has to respond to.
Officers, we respond to traffic accidents. A good portion of the time, a lot of the injuries could have been avoided, if the citizen, had had his seatbelt on.
Well, most of them are disputes, or if someone is the victim of a burglary, and those are pretty common calls that we have.
Common calls that require an uncommon type of person to respond.
Yeah, they tried to get into the storage container out back.
You've got to be able to come up with a solution on your own.
Our officers are very adaptable and very flexible, and they are capable of doing multitask.
And it really comes down to communicating, your ability to walk up to someone you've never met before and communicate in a professional manner.
And probably the biggest character that we look for is integrity.
All of these characteristics make up the patrol officer for the Sacramento Police Department and help prepare them for one of the most difficult jobs in the city.
A patrol officer is a jack of all trades. It's basically the backbone of most police agencies, but it's also one of the most strenuous positions on this department.
Strenuous, but also very rewarding. And that's what drives many of these officers to consistently do their best.
We go out of our way to help people. No matter how many times you've been on a domestic violence call or a theft call, every time it's something new and different, and you learn something.
You would interact with the community, and you actually were in a position to help people. And that's why I believe most people come into this profession, is for that ability to help somebody who's in distress or in need of something.
Many people get behind the wheel of a car several times a day, but there are times when some of them shouldn't because they've had too much to drink. The Sacramento Police Department is aggressively targeting the problem of driving under the influence of alcohol, and they've been joined in their efforts by two individuals whose personal tragedies will sober you up on the subject of drinking and driving.
You don't want to live what I have to live. You don't want to walk in my shoes. You don't want to feel the pain that I feel.
Dee Petway is a mother in pain. A repeat drunk driving offender, Kenneth Bartholomew, killed her 17-year-old daughter last December in front of her high school.
That was probably the most devastating moment of my life, and I will never, ever forget what that did to me. Sharmilia was a strong, determined young lady. From the time she was 3 years old, she informed me that she wanted to be a doctor. To know her was to love her.
Dee has taken that pain and the love for her daughter and turned it into a mission. She speaks passionately at area schools as part of the Every 15 Minutes program.
We spend our days remembering her, loving her, and basically moving forward. That's what she would have wanted. She was that type of person that would want us to continue doing what we know to do. And it's in her honor that we continue to do the work. That's why I became involved with Mothers Against Drunk Driving.
Now, Dee represents MAD, telling teens about her daughter and the dangers of drinking and driving.
My heart was just leaping out of my chest because I knew that my child was gone.
And although it's hard, I do it out of love. I do it because I don't want another parent to get the news that I got, that your child is dead.
David Van Brunt also got some bad news as a result of drinking and driving.
I just know that the alcohol just put my depth perception off, and I ended up right next to that truck. And once I was aware of how close I was, I tried to swerve away, and I slid to the side, and my bike left me, and I rolled under the truck. And the back wheels of the 18-wheel semi-truck crushed the lower half of my body.
In David's case, he was the drunk driver. No one else was injured in his traumatic motorcycle accident.
My right leg was amputated the night of the crash because of loss of blood. I would have died from just loss of blood, so they amputated my leg.
His decision to drink and drive left him in a coma for 5 weeks and made him a double amputee.
I knew I had to tell other people to not do this. This is ridiculous. I had no excuses. No one did it to me. I did it to myself, and again, this is preventable. So I always wanted to tell people.
David has also teamed with MAD and speaks to school groups and those who have been found guilty of driving under the influence.
I simply called MAD and told the first person who answered the phone my story and what I wanted to do, and they embraced me from day one.
Are you hungry? Anybody hungry?
Since the accident, he's earned his master's degree, married, and now has 2 children. David shares MAD's goal to prevent those who've been drinking from getting behind the wheel.
Hi, I'm Kelly Ripa.
That message is promoted through literature and public service announcements.
My sister was seriously injured in a drunk driving crash.
In 2002, more than 4,000 Californians were killed in alcohol-related car crashes, and a 4-year trend in Sacramento County shows an increase in injuries and fatalities due to alcohol-related traffic collisions. Nationwide, it's been estimated that drunk driving causes 1 death every 15 minutes. That startling statistic spawned the school presentation designed for teens that Dee and MAD participate in. The Every 15 Minutes program graphically depicts what can happen when intoxicated teenagers get behind the wheel.
This is the most intense program that a young person can go through to give them a basic understanding of what it is like to be under that influence and what the consequences are. And I'm more than happy to go anywhere that they send me. So I'm very excited about my involvement with them.
While the presentation targets young people, they're not the only audience who needs to hear the message.
I have been a person who has taken a drink of alcohol and got behind the wheel. I never did it to the extent that Mr. Bartholomew did, but I've been there.
It really doesn't matter whether or not you have a problem drinking or you don't have a problem drinking, because alcohol is a drug and alcohol affects people pretty much the same. You don't have to be an alcoholic to get in a drunk driving crash and to hurt yourself or others.
Drunk driving hits all walks of life. So, it's not targeting just an alcoholic or just, teenagers or whoever. It's everyone. Will be green 77.
That's why the Sacramento Police Department conducts DUI checkpoints throughout the year. They partner with MAD to educate the public about the consequences of driving under the influence of alcohol. While MAD passed out literature advocating alternatives to drinking and driving, the Sacramento Police Department passed out citations for DUI and driver's license violations.
DUI checkpoints are great. I think anything that's going to raise awareness and raise deterrence is a good thing.
There definitely is a big price to pay if you're caught while driving under the influence. Generally, the average DUI offense costs at least $3,000.
In addition to the costs, drunk drivers can lose their license, have their car towed, and face jail time. DUI checkpoints are located in neighborhoods where the Sacramento Police Department has noted a higher propensity for driving under the influence. This checkpoint, held on Franklin Boulevard, caught 60 license violators, towed 56 vehicles, and arrested 3 drivers for driving under the influence.
How's everybody doing tonight?
The checkpoints are set up with specific areas for law enforcement to focus on. The first section includes the greeters, the police who make the initial assessment about an individual's sobriety and the status of their driver's license. Ticketed vehicles are ushered into the triage section, where police and community service officers make further assessments to determine if the individual should be cited and the vehicle towed. If a driver is suspected of being under the influence of alcohol or drugs, a police officer will run them through a battery of mental and physical tests to assess their sobriety.
Could you tell me the alphabet from A to Z and without singing it, please? Anytime you're ready.
A, B, C, D.
The officer may also use a preliminary alcohol screening device, or PAS, to get an initial reading on the individual's blood alcohol content. In California, a driver is legally drunk if their blood alcohol reading is 0.08 or above. If you are under the influence of alcohol or drugs, MAD and the Sacramento Police Department want you to consider alternatives to drinking and driving.
Have a friend drive you. Have a designated driver with you when you're out drinking and having fun. We just don't want people on the road under the influence. So there are options.
Even if you're not the one impaired by alcohol, sometimes safety demands that you take the car keys away from someone who is.
I became more determined after this happened to my daughter to get the message not only of drinking and driving, but the message that love is a gift that you give. And when you say that you love someone, you're not going to let them do what you know is wrong.
It just seems like it's a waste when we respond to accidents where there's a drunk driver involved, and an extreme waste when there's an injury or death, because it more than likely all could have been avoided.
This is about public safety, and that in a blink of an eye, it can happen to you. And that's the bottom line, is that life is just too precious, and this is preventable.
We as human beings need to make better decisions about what we do. You never know what decision you make and how it's going to affect another individual. Make quality decisions. If you drink, you're not going to drive, period. You're putting too many lives at risk, and it's just not worth it.
In each edition of City Beat, we bring you Above and Beyond. It highlights work within the Sacramento Police Department that goes beyond what might be considered the normal duties of the job, and someone outside of the department brings it to our attention. When a local jazz artist's stolen car was recovered, meeting the police officer that caught the thief was music to his ears.
I teach for 2 colleges at present, Cosumnes River College and American River College. Car is extremely important to me because I'm traveling down to the Bay Area almost every weekend, and in turn I'm also, during the week, I'm performing around Sacramento and teaching every day. Currently I'm putting about 40 to 80 miles a day on my car, and when I drive to the Bay Area it's probably 300 to 400 miles during the weekend. Sunday evening I came home rather early from the Bay Area, parked my car in my driveway, fell asleep on the couch watching television, watching news, was awoken and realized that my car was gone. It was completely missing. And so I called 911 immediately and informed them that my car was stolen.
We recovered Steve's car while myself, Officer Lau, and Officer Blessing were on patrol in the North Sacramento area. We observed a vehicle kind of driving erratically through the neighborhood, high speed, making some quick turns. We got behind the vehicle and ran a check on the license, and it came back that it was a stolen plate. I met him and advised that he can take his car back, and he was very appreciative. And then that's the time when we learned that we had a mutual acquaintance.
The great thing about it was I'm sitting here looking at his badge. I'm thinking, wait a minute, Dobson, I know Dobson. Where's this name come from? And then I'm thinking Smith Dobson, the great jazz pianist from San Francisco. So I asked Officer Dobson, is it possible that you could be related to Smith Dobson, the great jazz pianist? And I said, you don't happen to have a family member in San Francisco? And he says, yes, Smith Dobson.
That's my dad.
Dobson was a very important influence in my life as a musician. The reason I wrote the letter is because I felt extremely grateful to the Sacramento Police Department for showing such professionalism in retrieving the car in less than 24 hours. And it was so important to me to get this car back and resume my career as a jazz musician. So for that, I'm forever grateful to Joshua.
This edition of City Beat has explored the driving ambition of the Sacramento Police Department. From the driver's training courses of EVOC to the police on patrol, the Sacramento Police Department is striving to keep its officers and the citizens safe on the streets and behind the wheel. If you would like more information about the Sacramento Police Department, visit them online at sacpd.org. For City Beat, I'm Joe Oliver.